Welcome to the new episode of the LG Wheelhouse. I am your host, SirMikeKnight. With me, as always, is Hutch and Colonel. How are you doing, guys?
I'm doing pretty good here. How are you guys doing?
Doing great. Hey, see you guys moved on to the Eastern Conference Finals. Congratulations, you got a tough road ahead with Norfolk. You guys both did it in really good fashion, though. I mean, 5 games. You only gave up 1, each one of you. But the West seemed a little more exciting. The West both games went on to 7 games, correct?
Yep, and I think they were 2 very exciting series.
Let's talk about the hot topic of the evening. We're going to talk about Marc Savard. Colonel.
Okay, so I'll just give a little bit of a backstory here on Savard from the start. So, way back between season 19 and 20, before the draft, a player signed up for LG. He made a forum post claiming to be Marc Savard and that he wanted to play in the league, and everyone was really, suspicious of it at first and saying, like, no way, you're Marc Savard. So Tris got him to, tweet about it on his verified Twitter account and stuff, and he did IP checks on them on Xbox Live and stuff, and it showed that it actually was Savard, so at least most people believe that it actually is. Anyway, he got drafted, promoted early, like he got exceptional status because of who he was, and he wanted to play in the NHL, so he got entered into the entry draft. I can't remember what pick he went overall. It was in the top 5, I think. So anyway, Savard he was playing in his second season. He ended up on the Nashville Predators after it was all said and done. And in the playoffs right now, he was a little upset with some of the line combinations that his management group was selecting, so he decided to quit and got a 2-season ban. So we figured that was a pretty big issue in LG, so we talked about that a little bit. So what do you guys think of all that?
Hutch?
Well, to me, having Marc Savard, if it really is Marc Savard, in the league, it is pretty big for the league. And when this all went down at the beginning of season 20, Marc coming in and getting this exceptional status, having the ability to bypass the CHL, which each and every one of us have to put in that 1 season in the CHL, you knew it had to be something special for him to get exceptional status. A lot of people, it kind of rubbed them the wrong way, but at the same time, I can understand why the LG brass would give him exceptional status. It's basically for the growth of the league, and I accept that. I want this league to grow, and I want this league to be successful, so, I don't have a problem when, something like this happens. So, it was great from my point of view to have someone of Marc Savard's stature in our league. He was an elite NHL player for 4 or 5 seasons, and due to concussion issues he had to retire early. So I mean, having him in the league, for everyone, I believe is great. However, like Colonel was alluding to, he kind of got a little upset in the playoffs this year for Nashville. I actually reached out to our board of governors again to kind of get some information. They didn't really have a whole lot to share with me, but basically told me, he quit out on his team, he was mad, and basically somewhere along the line in the series he wanted to join back up. But, once you get the 2-season ban, you're pretty well out. So, he's not coming back this season. He may buy out his ban. I don't really know what the situation is because apparently people can buy out their ban. Last season when he came in, he put up some decent numbers. He was 26-0 in the regular season, had 81 points, which ranked him 16th in the NHL. This season was a little more rough. Short season, 9-6-2, had 40 points, but he fell drastically in the point standings, way down to tied for 82nd. Still, he's putting up decent numbers in the NHL, but, I think one question that everyone and I guess it's been on everyone's mind since he first came in the league. Is this really Mark Savard? Yes, the verified Twitter tweeted out that Mark Savard joined LG, but a lot of people that I've been talking to who have played with Mark Savard or somehow have conversed with Mark Savard, they all have questions. They ask him stuff, and it doesn't seem like he can quite give them the correct answer. People have been doing back checks on IP, and people claim that it doesn't necessarily match. It's always been a question of topic. Whether or not this is really Mark Savard. Personally, I kind of believe that it is based on the verified Twitter status. But hearing from my friends and people that I know that, like I said, have been playing with him, and they kind of get mixed feelings about it. They don't necessarily entirely believe that it's him, but at the same time, it's not really the question at hand right now. He did get the 2-season ban. Will he be back? Who knows? I really hope that if it is actually Mark Savard that he does come back for NHL 16. I think that the community is going to grow quite a bit, and I think having Mark Savard as part of that can only do us good. And if he does not return, I guess we'll say thanks for coming along for the ride. Other than that, that's pretty well all I gotta say.
Yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? Having somebody like Mark Savard in the league does nothing but good things, and helps kind of get league gaming exposure. And the fact that he went out like that kind of sucks. And me being a Bruins fan, I need to put that aside. Anybody who quits out like he did, it's not all right in my book. You know what I'm saying? I mean, come on. You didn't get on the line you wanted to?
It was really good for LG at the time, even if it wasn't Savard, just because that Twitter account had a lot of followers. So that Twitter account alone, got him like maybe over 10,000 followers of Mark Savard's Twitter got to see about LG, and he had a link to the site and stuff there. I'm pretty sure in it, so that's good free advertising for him, right?
Yep. I mean, even if it isn't, I'm looking at his Twitter account right now, and even if it isn't, I mean, he's got a bunch of followers and a bunch of famous followers too. Obviously, if he's actually Mark Savard, he would. But anyway, kind of a bitch move. Maybe he was just having a bad day. Who knows? Maybe he will buy out of his ban.
And
maybe he'll come back next season.
It kind of rubs me the wrong way, because I mean, you even look back at the Ric Flair ban here in the AHL. It kind of seems like these guys, kind of get a little power hungry, and they think that they can run the show, and suddenly, they're told what to do, and they don't necessarily like it, and they decide to take their ball and go home. So, to me, it really rubs me the wrong way when you see this kind of stuff, and, this is definitely the type of player that I don't want on my team. Not anything personally against Mark Savard, but, if he's going to be pulling this kind of stuff, I would not want him on my team, regardless of how good he is. Because, it just rubs everyone the wrong way, and, you will have people complaining about him, and, to me, it's just a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. All right, well, we'll move on. Let's go to the round 2 recap. We already brought up a little bit about the Eastern Conference Finals going to 5 games each, but we do have the inside scoop on the Syracuse matchup, don't we?
Yeah, well, as we know, Syracuse won the series against Albany 4-1. Looking back at it, there were 3 one-goal games in the series, although Syracuse did outscore Albany 22-11. The series was a lot closer than a lot of things actually showed. I think Albany put up a great fight. Kudos to them for showing up each and every game. There were no forfeits, and each and every game was played with a lot of respect. Close games. There was that 9-1 blowout, but other than that, everything was either 1 goal or 2 goals. So, a lot of respect for Albany for showing up for all games, and definitely giving us a tough challenge going into the conference finals.
All right, Colonel, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give it up for Albany. They showed a lot of class and respect, and they came out and fought hard in this series. I watched Game 5 on Twitch. It was intense to see my friends, in there in overtime. And I've played with most of them there in Albany. I've played with Swiss and B-Man, and they're pretty good guys. So to see Game 5 went to overtime, it was pretty intense. Like, most games, like Hutch said, were one goal or, like, 2 goals. They were really close. So we gotta give a lot of respect for Albany in our series, but it was really hard fought. It could have went either way.
Right. And the other series, Norfolk beats out Worcester. So we'll probably never have to say that again until next season, right? Since I'm the only one that can pronounce it right anyway. To move on to play Syracuse in the Eastern Conference Finals. You guys have anything about that game?
Well, as we know, Norfolk won the series 4-1. The series, I don't really know because I wasn't in the series, but from the outside looking in, it wasn't a close series. Norfolk outscored Worcester 15-6, and of course, Worcester forfeited Game 5. I don't like to see that. It seemed like it was the same thing last series against Hershey for Norfolk. Forfeits at this point in time is unexcusable. I've heard a bit about that forfeit. Apparently, from what I've heard, and this may be a little biased because it's kind of coming out of the Norfolk camp, but basically, Worcester tried to bring in a couple of legal lineups during the series by bringing in last-minute roster swaps. Of course, once the lobby is up and it's either around the 9:35 or 10:35 Eastern mark, you can't bring in a roster swap without special permission from the other team. It has to be a training camp player. Apparently, they've done it in Game 3, and the game was played, and, Norfolk tried to protest the game after the fact, but was told, you already played the game, so you cannot file the complaint now. Apparently, Worcester tried to pull the same antics in Game 5. However, this time, Norfolk picked up on it beforehand and, gave Worcester ample time to find another ECU, but, apparently management was not on, and another ECU could not be found, so then the game was forfeited. So I'm not entirely sure if that's exactly how things went, but from what I've been hearing, the series didn't necessarily go down in a respectful way. But like I said, I wasn't in the series, so I can't really tell you for sure what went on there. But from what I'm hearing, it kind of seemed like there was a bit of sketchiness going on behind the scenes. But, like I said, I wasn't there, so I can't tell you for sure. But, I was a little upset to see Worcester go down the way they did. I thought that they would put up a bit of a better fight, but, at the end of the day, Norfolk walks away with a 4-1 series win.
All right, so move on to the West. Now, the West was a different story. It both came down to Game 7. And let's talk about OKC versus Toronto, because this is the one that, Colonel, you and I had picked as the upset, with Toronto taking it in 7, right?
Yeah, we did, and I think that game was stolen by OKC's goalie Leprechaun, because they were out time on attack some like 9 or 10 minutes to 2. Like the Marlies had 9 or 10 minutes, and OKC had 2. Yet OKC still won 3-2 because of stellar goaltending. So I think they can totally thank their goalie for that series, because the Marlies probably should have won that game. If it was anyone else in net, I think OKC would have lost, and we would have been right, Mike, but we were wrong, thanks to Leprechaun.
Hey, we don't mind being wrong. We tell everybody to prove us wrong, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so moving on, the Rochester Americans. Now, this kind of surprised me a little bit. Utica pushing it to a Game 7. I don't remember who it was, but somebody went into the comments section after our last show and said, "Don't sleep on Utica." Maybe we should have listened. Game 7 brings Rochester to Game 7, however, cannot hold on. Anybody got anything to say about that?
Well, yeah, I'd like to comment here. Rochester was losing the series 3-2, so Utica really had a stranglehold on them. That really blew me away. Of course, Rochester ended up winning the series 4-3, and looking back on it, they did actually outscore Utica 35-23. But like Mike was alluding to, maybe we did sleep a little on Utica, and I think that Utica definitely gained a lot of respect from me in this series. They were one win away from going to the conference finals. Unfortunately, the really big power guns of Rochester showed up in Game 6 and Game 7, and, it was unfortunate for Utica, but I don't really know what else to say. Utica did put up a tough fight. However, they just couldn't overcome Rochester. They had them in a stranglehold, but, Rochester, clawed back, got in the series again, and eventually won out.
I'm not
Right.
sure. I'm not sure what happened, but I don't think Zolomon played in Game 7 for Utica, and he would have been their top player because he finished like close to the top.
Could have been availability issue.
Yeah, it could have been,
Um,
but no, I don't think he didn't play. So
yeah,
it was
that
interesting.
sucks. Anyway, all right, let's move on to round 2 shockers. Shocker. Hutch.
All right, so I guess Colonel just took the words right out of my mouth. Zolomon does not play in Game 7 of the Rochester Utica series. That was a big shocker to me. He played Games 2 and Game 5, so, when he finished his 2 games, they were winning 3-2. Finished the series 1-1, had 6 goals and 1 assist for 7 points, so obviously, he's been a goal scorer. He's been that way all season. And, looking at the Game 7 lineup, neither the GM or a GM of the team is in the lineup. I don't know, like Mike may have said before, it could have came down to availability. It looks as though they put out their second line against the Hertz, Ennis, and Army of One line. Not saying that their second line is bad, because obviously they have, a really strong team. They made it this far and pushed Rochester to Game 7, so, I'm not necessarily saying that that line is not good at all. It's just that it shocks me that Zolomon is not in the Game 7. And another thing I noticed throughout the series that Zolomon did not play against the top Rochester line. So I don't know if that was a strategy going in to kind of separate him from the Rochester line to kind of get wins when Hertz, Ennis, and Army of One is not playing. But nonetheless, Zolomon does not play in Game 7 and does not play against the Rochester top line in the series, and that to me is the round 2 shocker.
All right. So, Colonel, round
Yeah.
2 shocker.
Yeah, my shocker is the forfeits in the Norfolk series, Norfolk and Worcester. Um, I don't understand why people try so hard sometimes for forfeits. Like, I'm not saying Norfolk or Worcester were being, disrespectful or anything, but when you're in the playoffs, it don't you want to see the games played on the ice? Like, I mean, yeah, you'll get an award on your LG thing, but if you didn't really like earn it, it doesn't really matter. Like, I really don't agree with taking forfeits in the playoffs. It really gets on my nerves, and I think GM should be a little bit more respectful toward each other. I mean, I know you're trying to win and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's just a game we're playing here, and everyone wants to put it out on the ice and win it the real way. So, I mean, it just kind of blows my mind that this forfeit stuff happens so often, especially right at the end of the season. Like, you put a lot of work into your season, and to see it come down like that, it just kind of breaks my heart.
Right. All right. I guess the shocker for me would be the Western Conference itself. I mean, both Toronto and Utica had a stranglehold on OKC and Rochester. They were both up 3-2 and could not hold on and get that win in the last 2. So I guess that's the shocker to me. Moving on. Round 2 MVPs. Hutch, start us off.
All right, so my round 2 MVP is Army of One. Currently leads the league in playoff scoring, but really looking at this Game 7 series, he went 3-0-0. He was in that Game 7. He scored 4 goals, 12 assists for 16 points. 16 points in 3 games in a critical 7-game series, that's pretty big in my books. On the playoffs, he's 5-0, 9 goals, 18 assists for 27 points, so he's taken over that first overall scoring race. And like I said, Army of One is a big-time player. He plays on that line with Ennis and Hertz. We've really talked about this line a lot during the season. I really like this line. I think it's perhaps maybe even the best line in the league. And I don't think that we can ignore the contributions from Army of One. I think that he's really risen his game. He kind of he was kind of in the shadow a little bit throughout the season. Hurts kind of led the way, and he kind of took the back seat to Hurts. But he's really stepping up here in the playoffs when it really matters. And I think for his team, he was definitely the most valuable player. And I think for round 2, he's definitely my choice of the most valuable player.
All right, Colonel.
For me, the round 2 MVP is got to be Leprechaun 205. The guy basically, like I was saying earlier, stole Game 7 away from the Marlies. He faced like 10 shots from Wii U on the Marlies, and Wii U got 0 goals. Like he stoned them cold, man. So he stole that game for sure. He finished with a 89.5 save percentage, which is ridiculously high on 19 shots and 6s. So hats off to him for sure. He's my MVP.
All right, I'm gonna go with a goalie as well, and I have no idea how these two couldn't go homer and pick him out. Wizard of Osgood out of Syracuse, just dominating in the playoffs with a 1.59 goals against average, leading every goalie out there, and also has a really respectable 82.8 save percentage. So, Wizard of Osgood out there in Syracuse, keep doing what you're doing. Lead you guys to a Calder Cup. I'm sure you guys can respect that.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think, in my opinion, definitely been our best player so far in the playoffs. We've had a bit of issue with goaltending in terms of, showing up for games and stuff, but, Ozzy has definitely stepped in there, and, he hasn't looked back. He is our main guy now, and, we do not any longer have to worry about Counter-Strike tournaments because we know that we have Wizard of Osgood to rely on. So, I completely agree with you there, Mike. Wizard of Osgood has definitely been our MVP so far. And keep up the good work, Ozzy.
All right, let's move on to the Syracuse versus Norfolk series that is coming up in about 24 hours from when we recorded this. Hutch, let's start.
All right, so like last time, I'm not going to give a prediction because it's our own series, but I will give a little bit of a breakdown here. Surprisingly, this is Syracuse and Norfolk's first meeting of the season. So, there's been a lot of bickering back and forth on the forums, but, we have not played Norfolk all season, so, it's going to be pretty exciting for us, and I'm assuming Norfolk as well. These two teams battled it out all season, although not against each other. Both finished tied with 80 points. However, Syracuse did get the edge with the 40th win, whereas Norfolk only had 39, so the first seed was awarded to Syracuse. So looking at the playoffs so far, Syracuse has gone 8-2, Norfolk's gone 8-1. But to me, I think the really interesting concept here, and I'll use this term lightly, but we'll say battle of the backups. We have Wizard of Osgood versus JF Lucan, and these two goalies have been lights out for both teams. I no longer say that Wizard of Osgood is our backup, but we're just basing this on, kind of regular season kind of stuff. But yeah, to me, this is the battle of the backups and, the battle of offense versus defense. So, it's going to come down to who's got the better defense. These two teams match up really well. And, a lot of weight is going to go into depth. And whoever comes out on top, really.
Colonel.
Yeah, I agree with Hutch on most everything he just said. I think it's going to be an extremely close. Seriously though, I think it's going to be an extremely close series. I don't really see one team coming out on top. It's hard to pick someone who's got an advantage because we're both really good, solid teams throughout the whole lineup. So I'm hoping that it's going to be a good, clean series. Respectable and whatnot. And just, the servers are shit, so it's kind of hard to get all your guys connected sometimes. I mean, we try to be respectable about forfeits and stuff like that, so I'm not sure what's going to happen, but hopefully everyone gets into our games on time, and I wish Norfolk good luck, and it's going to be an entertaining series for sure. Hopefully everyone's twitching it.
And I say this every week since the playoffs have started, but this is the game to watch so far. You got Syracuse and Norfolk. Not once have they met each other during the season. They end 1-2, and they are so close in margin as far as who got 1 and who got 2. Now, and they're both teams' offenses are ridiculous. Both teams' defenses are ridiculous, and their goaltending is stepping up. Now, the one thing that swayed me, and I know you guys are going to hate me for this, the one thing that swayed me is the 2 goaltenders. Right now, Syracuse only has 1 goaltender showing up, and that's Wizard of Osgood. And if he can get all 4 wins, which is really tough to do, if he can get all 4 wins, then you guys can take the series. But you still got to score on Lukin and Gray without R. Both great goaltenders. So I'm giving the slight edge to Norfolk. I'm going Norfolk in 7. It's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a tough one. 50-50 shot in Game 7 and out. And it's the slightest margin, guys. Come on. Yeah. Don't get all pissy. Slightest margin here.
I'm not getting pissy. We like being the underdog. So we're going to prove you wrong, Mike.
Go ahead and prove me wrong. Go ahead. I have to base my stuff on purely what I can see on paper here. And what I see on paper is in the top goaltending, I have 1 from Syracuse. I have 2 from Norfolk. So unless you guys can get Galley to show up, we're
gonna set up a Counter-Strike trap at his house or something. We can lure him back.
But like Colonel said there, we really like when you endorse Norfolk, because it really inspires us. And
I've been endorsing Norfolk for the last 5 weeks, man.
The last time that you really put a big endorsement in for Norfolk, we actually came back and took the conference. So hopefully that happens again, and we actually win the conference.
That's actually not true, because I put an endorsement for Norfolk last episode, and they went and whooped Worcester. So.
Yeah, we're not saying you take away from them, but we're just saying you inspire us.
Moving on. We'll move on to the West. We're going OKC and Rochester. Hutch.
All right, so once again, we have 1 versus 2. Rochester won the season series 2-0. The last half of the season, I think Rochester has been the better team. In those 2 games, Rochester outscored Oklahoma City 9-3. And when we really look at the series, and I mean, people are probably going to hate on me for reiterating this, but, we have Hertz and us an Army of 1. Those guys are absolute dynamite out there, and, they're taking on Leprechaun and Brodeur. So it's going to be the ultimate battle of offense versus goaltending. And, as they say, goaltending and defense wins you championships. But, when you come up against a line like these guys, you really have to be on your game. And I'm not saying that Rochester has bad goaltending by any means, but we all know that Rochester is, this top line is their main weapon, as is Oklahoma City with their goaltending. So it's going to be really important for Brodeur and Leprechaun to kind of bring their A game. They're going to be worked this series, so it's really going to come down to who's better of those 2 groups of players. And ultimately, my prediction of this series, I think Rochester wins 4-2, so that's Rochester in 6 games for me.
I'm going to agree with you on the 4-2. I'm going to agree with you that Rochester's going to take this game, but for different reasons. Rochester's goaltending is not bad. I mean, you got Lucky Irish 33 and Clark, but their offense is what is leaning me towards this. They don't just have that one line of Army 1, Ennis, and Hertz. They also have Hot Wing and Pulowski, who are putting up crazy numbers in the playoffs. If you look at the top scorers, the top point getters in the playoffs so far, you will see almost half of it Rochester. It's ridiculous the amount of scoring they're putting up there. So I'm going to go ahead and agree with you. Rochester in 6. OKC, prove me wrong. Colonel.
I agree with you guys for the most part on Rochester's offense being, overpowering in comparison to OKC's. But OKC's been like a 1-goal game, kind of barely winning the games team. So it's almost like Leprechaun is lucky or something, like he's winning them games, and he's at least bringing them good luck, because it's barely
Leprechaun versus the luck of the Irish, right?
Yeah, I mean, He's barely escaped the clutches of the Marlies in the second round. So it's going to come down to basically whether he can stand on his head or not. Like Leprechaun and Brodeur are going to have to play like Martin Brodeur in his prime, like Stanley Cup winning years. They're going to have to pull it off. Like carry this team is the only way they're beating Rochester, in my opinion. I think that the offense from the Americans is going to be just too much. Like, unless something happens on their end and they end up with availability issues or something, I don't see them losing this series. I'm going to agree with your guys' predictions, too. I'm going to say Rochester in 6. I just don't think it's going to end up going to Game 7. But, like I said, the only way OKC's getting out of this is if their goaltending is phenomenal.
All right, so we're pretty much in agreement there. In 6. Rochester in 6. So we're going to look at the possibility of Norfolk versus Rochester, right? But if you asked me at the beginning of the playoffs, if the Eastern Conference winner was going to win this entire thing, I would have said absolutely. From what I'm seeing from Rochester, I don't know. It's going to be really hard for me to try to pick a winner next week. But anyway, let's move on. We're going to move on to the players to watch. We have 4 teams left in the playoffs, which means our players to watch is dwindling. So, Hutch, players to watch.
All right, so, I think a real player to watch in the next round is going to be Hertz 18 from Rochester. He's kind of been quiet in the playoffs so far. He's 3-1-0 with 13 points, currently tied for 10th. But as we all know, he was a John B. Sullenberger Award winner. Finished the season 13-2-3 with 43 goals, 38 assists, and 81 points. So he was our league leader in points. He's a dominant player, and that whole line. If I could pick all of them for my player to watch, I would. But one person in particular, I think, is Hertz. People may be overlooking him now that he's kind of fallen in the rankings a little bit. But I think that he's just waiting for a coming out party, and I suspect that this series is probably going to be it.
I am going to pick a group of players to watch, all right? And I know this is cheating, but I'm going to go with the goaltending of the Eastern Conference semifinals. And I'm not just talking about one team. I'm talking about the entire team, all goaltending, okay? Because if Galley and Wizard of Osgood show up, if Galley shows up and plays the way that he did during the regular season, and if Wizard of Osgood continues the way he is, that's going to make a huge difference for the Syracuse. And the same thing goes for Norfolk. If Lucan and Gray Without Art can continue playing the way they are playing, it is going to be huge. Now, the reason I'm saying the entire goaltending, because if Galley doesn't show up, who's the ECU for Syracuse? So those are my players to watch, the goaltending in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Colonel?
So basically, I think I'm going to pick Leprechaun of the OKC and Rochester series. I think, like I've said before in the show, he's gonna make or break OKC on getting to the finals. Like, I'll leave it at that for what I think of the finals, because these are 4 really good teams that are left, and at the end of the day, with shitty bounces or EA or puck luck or whatever it is, stuff can go one way or the other in the playoffs. And I'm really superstitious, so I try to just keep my nose at the forums and making predictions, and I don't change my underwear and all this stuff, But I think Leprechaun's going to make or break OKC on getting to the finals, and if whoever wins out of this series, it's going to be an interesting race for the Calder Cup from there on.
You're absolutely right. So anyway, that's it for us. Closing remarks. Hutch.
All right, so just before we close off here, I'd like to say, this is very exciting going into the conference finals. We have 1 versus 2 in both conferences. It's not something we always see. Looking at the 4 teams, all 4 of them finished within 2 points of each other. So we have OKC, of course, on top with 81 points, Syracuse with 80, Norfolk with 80, and Rochester with 79. So, the teams are fairly close. And, I think that any of these series could go either way. Like Colonel was saying, it kind of depends on the bounces and whatnot. But, I think that either way, I would not be surprised to see any combination of the four in the Calder Cup final. So, it's really going to be exciting to see the best four teams in the AHL battle it out for the Calder Cup. And also, just an update on last week's predictions, and correct me if I'm wrong. I went 3-0 on my predictions, and we're just basing this solely on which team won, not necessarily how many games were played. Colonel was 2-1, and Mike was 3-1. However, I will point out that the one loss for both Mike and Colonel was the Game 7 series between Toronto and Oklahoma City, which they both predicted to go to 7 games. So, I think that was quite a prediction there. So, if you really want to look at it, I think we all kind of went perfect in our predictions. However, you guys did miss it on the OKC moving on, but, it is what it is. I think that we done pretty good with our predictions last week, and, I'll just pass it along to you guys if you guys have any closing remarks there.
Oh, no, I completely agree with you. I mean, this is as exciting as it gets, right? 1 and 2 and both sides, all of them were right. I mean, OKC and Rochester were running away with their conference. It was a little tighter there in the East, but I mean, you guys in Norfolk held it down for the most part anyway. So this is a really exciting top four. I mean, honestly, this is good, and you're completely right. Any one of these teams could go in. We make predictions based off of what we see on paper, but that's not what always transpires on the ice, right? So go out there, give it your all. It's going to be great. It is going to be a great semifinal, and leading on to what I predict to be a great final. No matter which team is in there, which two teams are in there, it's going to be a great final. Colonel, you got anything to add?
Yeah. So I'd just like to say that I'm really excited to play in this series against Norfolk. I've been waiting for a while now to play in a really deep playoff series to have a good run, because in season 19 our playoff run got cut short. We got put in the second round against Binghamton Senators. So it's the first time I've ever been this deep in the AHL playoffs, and I'm just excited for us as a team moving forward and for myself. So hopefully everything goes well, and like you guys have both said, it's top four that we could have predicted at the start of the season, or when we noticed who was pulling away from the pack a little bit. Our race was tighter, but I mean, OKC and Rochester still fought for their wins. I mean, they earn wins over everyone, even Eastern Conference teams too. So it's really interesting to see all of, we'll call, the top-ranked teams making it to the Final Four. So we're just looking forward to playing, and everybody keep your stick on the ice.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the LG Wheelhouse. As always, from myself, Hutch, and Colonel, LG, have a great night.
The Boston Bruins here today, but here's Lucic into the zone. Drops it off, and a high shot sails over the shoulder. Oh, one of the Bruins just got blasted.
Matt Cook, the hit just as that shot was released. And they're going at Cook right now.
Well, a blow to the head there, and Savard went down, and he is not moving any more than just a little bit, still on his back.